Would you like to know the ugly truth about scorecards? Drive supplier performance with metrics that matter. Most scorecards don't tell companies what their stakeholders want to know about a supplier's past performance in order to drive meaningful future performance. In this case study, I'll describe one client's journey to develop metrics that matter and tell you how to separate reports from metrics. Since stakeholders need to know about their supplier's performance, buying companies establish scorecards, but they are different from collecting information that would be considered reporting. Now, performance-based contracts are a class of agreements where payment for goods and services is contingent on the supplier achieving clearly outlined performance goals or desired outcomes. Typically, performance-based contracts contain the following 5 critical components. 1, a performance work statement or performance-based statement of work. 2, a quality assurance surveillance plan. 3, performance-based metrics. 4, contractual incentives or disincentives. And 5, the right type of pricing model. This case study focuses on the third element, metrics. All of my advice is as applicable to service and IT type of agreements as they are to manufacturing contracts. All right, let's define performance metrics. You heard the adage, what gets measured gets done. Contract professionals should incorporate and monitor performance in the form of metrics. Now, metrics are units of measurement, often called KPIs or SLAs. Those are the most common form of performance metrics. Now, a client of mine is entering into a high value, high visibility deal with one of only 2 suppliers capable of performing this type of specialized work. The senior leaders at both the buying company and the selling company want a scorecard, obviously for different reasons. The buying company wants to hold the supplier accountable, and the supplier wants to earn the bonus payments. Now, the buying company has a history of using standards and corporate scorecards, and they've been given permission to modify those scorecards in certain instances. So here are the 5 steps that my client and I followed. Step 1, my client and I looked at a number of scorecards to see what had been done in the past. We evaluated the performance measures and determined that some measures, such as for security, were still necessary at a corporate level. So we incorporated those metrics into our draft scorecard. We didn't need to modify those at all. Then in step 2, we looked at the specific work and the overarching business objectives that this supplier was supposed to meet. Now, looking high level at the work, we identified desired outcomes for the relationship. From there, we tried to narrow down to actions that suppliers had complete control over. Now, that's critical. Suppliers cannot and should not be held responsible for tasks that they cannot exert full control over. Then in step 3, we invited the supplier into the discussions about the metrics. Having the supplier at this very early phase of conception, they are gaining buy-in for their performance meeting standards. Then in step 4, we had a workshop. It was all done on Teams and Zoom. It wasn't physically there to fill out the rest of the determination of the metric. Things like who's collecting the data? What is the data source? What is a tolerance, if any, for that performance standard? Are there incentives or are there liquidated damages? That sort of thing. So we could actually determine that what the line of business stakeholders wanted could actually be tracked with real physical information. Step 5, we picked a period of time, a business quarter, to collect the data as a trial run. We wanted to make sure that what we anticipated the results to be from the collection of data actually happened, meaning we could enter that data source, we could pull the information down, we could validate it. It did provide good insight about past performance that would give us some indication as to future performance. Okay. So this is the strategic relationship requirements spreadsheet, and this is the spreadsheet that my client and I use to develop the metrics. As you can see here on the left, we've got a business outcome column 1. And in column 1, that's where we placed the larger business objectives for this particular project, or the desired outcomes that the supplier was supposed to meet. In column 2, you've got the key performance indicator. In column 3, the standard that the KPI is going to be measured against. Then in column 4, you've got the tolerance. All 3 of these columns, 2, 3, and 4, are considered performance. In column 5, we had liquidated damages. That's what the client chose to focus on. Then in column 6, 7, 8, and 9, we talk about validation. So in column 6, we discussed who collects the data. In column 7, we validated the data source. In column 8, we talked about calculation, how that particular score was going to be calculated. And then in column 9, how often was it collected? Was it going to be collected once a month, once a quarter, semi-annually, etc.? If you'd like a copy of this strategic relationship requirements spreadsheet to build your own metrics, you can find a copy in my book, The Contract Professional's Playbook, where there are 23 other kinds of tools in the form of checklists and spreadsheets that are applicable to performance and outcome-based contracting. Now, let me explain briefly what the difference is between metrics and reporting. Metrics are those critical path points, or those critical indicator points in the performance of the work that must be tracked to ensure the business outcome of the performance of the supplier. Those critical points, if missed, will create a domino effect of other critical missed points. Reporting tends to be far more granular. And reporting tends to be those kinds of activities or metrics that could be a leading indicator of poor performance, but don't necessarily mean that the performance will, in fact, be poor. An example that my co-author Lawrence Kane and I like to use in the playbook is about flying. You can track every 50-mile leg of a flight from Seattle to New York City. But if you have a layover in Chicago and you have to land in Chicago at a particular time to take off from Chicago on the flight to New York City, you want that metric to be the metric that's either incentivized or penalized. Measuring all other sorts of factors, could be weather, could be the headwinds, it could be the departure time from Seattle. Those could indicate that the plane will be late, but planes make up all kinds of time and air. So what you really want to be careful about is the sense that you land in Chicago on time to take off for New York on time. And that would be the sole metric that you would use, because if you miss the plane to New York City, there would be genuine financial consequences to that missed departure to New York City. All right. If you'd like to learn more, you can always purchase your copy of the Contract Professional's Playbook. A copy of the template that I showed you just a moment ago in screen share is in paper form in the Contract Professional's template, and you can always call me. I'd be happy to help you work with your suppliers to develop meaningful metrics.